Hey folks, welcome to Terrier Talk. This week I want to touch on something, two terms, management and training. Okay, what is the difference between management and training? Why do we need both? How do they affect each other? All that sort of stuff. So, when we're trying to achieve a goal with our dog, right, which let's say we're trying to teach them, for example, recall. It's one of those skills that we all, want our dogs to have. And we're thinking to ourselves, right, how am I going to teach this recall? Now, the majority of people's approach to that is to start with training. Yeah, and you'd think to yourself that was absolutely the right thing to do. I'm going to train my dog to do a recall. And we do something like call the dog's name, they come running over, we give them some sort of treat, and we repeat that, okay? And then we blow our whistle and we associate it with food and all that sort of stuff. Now, that's the training part, okay? That's the part where you teach your dog a new skill. Now, the management part, which is often the part that's missing, is the part where we prevent the dog doing all of the things that contribute to the other side of that picture, okay? Now, the problem with terriers specifically is that sometimes the things that are solving our problems are so massively high value that we cannot overcome them with training if we don't have good management. So let's take recall as an example for that. If you have trained your dog that this word or this noise or whatever you're using, your whistle or your voice command or something, means run towards me and get a treat, okay? That's fairly simple. It's not tricky to do. Most dogs pick it up straight away. The problem is that, like people will say, oh, my dog's recall is fantastic, until. Yeah? And it's until something that is of higher value to your dog than the prize you have on offer for recall turns up. All right? So it might be that my dog's recall is fantastic until they see another dog. My dog's recall is fantastic until they see a deer. Okay? And what happens is we don't manage that part of it. So we don't put our dogs on a long line or a lead or manage the environment that they're in while we practice the skills. Okay, so what we have then is like this seesaw situation where the dog sees another dog, goes running up to it, has a fantastic time, and doesn't recall. And then the next time the dog manages to recall, let's say, because it was a less exciting dog, or it was further away, or there was some sort of circumstance that made the recall easier. And then we've got one failed recall and one successful recall. But what we've actually got is one successful recall under easy circumstances and one failed recall under difficult circumstances, right? Now, the thing is, the reason the dog went for that, or failed that recall, if you like, is because the thing they were going to was of higher value, yeah? So now if you think about it like a seesaw or a scale, you've basically just weighted the side of not recalling much heavier than you have the side of recalling, okay? And basically, this is where people get stuck in a rut because they never get any progress. They either seesaw around, so they get one good recall, and they're like, yeah, recall's going really well, or they get 2 or 3 good recalls, and they're like, yeah, training's going great, and then they get a fail because of something high value, like another dog or a bit of wildlife or something like that, and they're like, oh, it's fine. We've had one failed recall in 5 attempts, so that's good. But the problem is that the failures are of higher value to the dog than the successes, okay? Because the dog either got the world's best play with, a dog that's now their best friend, and that was an amazing experience, or they chased a deer, or they chased a rabbit, which is just so massively rewarding for them. It's the difference between you giving them a fiver every time they recall and the thing that they have failed to recall for, so chasing the deer, playing with the dog, nicking the sandwich, is giving them $5,000. So even though you've recalled them successfully 5 times and they've failed once, that one fail is value-wise so much bigger. Okay, so your scales are almost constantly either tipping left and right, or even though you're getting more recalls than you think you are, than you think you're failing, your scale is still tipped massively in the opposite direction. Okay, and that's where people get it wrong. So that's why you then need management, right? You need management so that you can tip your scales back the other way. And your management is going to be along the lines of a lead or a long line. And crucially, one that people miss really often, I think, is environmental management, okay? If you can take your dog somewhere and let them off a lead where there's no wildlife, for example, right? And by this, it needs to be a real life environment. Dogs click into the same environment repetitively, really quickly, so they'll soon get used to the fact that it's a secure field and it's the same secure field they go to every time. And practice your recall there and really make it solid and really make it suitable. And you're going to put huge weight onto that side of the scales for your recall. Then you are then in a much better situation when you then actually are faced with a real life problem situation, the world's most exciting dog, some sort of wildlife, because your scales are massively weighted in your favour at that time. Yeah. So management, and I particularly am a massive fan of environmental management because it's not physically on the dog and the dog doesn't realise, really. They don't know that you've gone somewhere where there isn't the thing that they want to chase, or you've gone somewhere where you can keep the thing at a massive distance or whatever. They don't know that. So it's not like having a lead on them or a line on them where they're like, oh, hang on, I know I'm on this line. So as soon as she takes it off, poof, off I go. You are setting yourself up much, much more successfully by doing that, okay? So management is such a small... not small at all. It is often overlooked and a smaller part of the picture than it should be. You can actually train through management. If your management's good, that will do a lot of your training for you because you will just gradually tip the scales in your favour over to the side that you want for whatever behaviour it is. The other thing that people miss in terms of the management versus training picture is that they don't manage similar behaviours. Okay? So if your dog is, let's think of a classic, barking at other dogs, okay? You must connect anything where it is similar and include that within your management plan. So if I'm trying to get a dog over reactivity and I am managing them barking at other dogs during the day when I'm out on walks by making sure that I go to places for their kind of dog time or when I'm just walking them and I'm not training away from other dogs. And then I am then going and doing training specifically around other dogs and we're looking for my triggers, but I'm in training mode, yeah? And I'm making that effort and I'm controlling it and I'm setting my situations up and I'm doing a fantastic job of it all and everything's looking really good and I'm nailing it, right? My management plan's really good and my training's bang on. I'm like, yes. But I'm then going out to work. I'm leaving my dog for a few hours in the morning. Let's say the dog walker's coming at lunchtime or whatever. And then I'm leaving for a few hours in the afternoon. And that dog is spending that whole day barking out of the window at other dogs that go by. A lot of people don't put the two together, okay? And it is the same thing. It's the same behaviour. And so you are nailing your training outside and you're getting everything right and you're doing exactly what your dog trainer says or your online course you've taken. You're like, I'm doing this and it's not working. Why isn't it working? It's because your dog is practicing that behaviour either the same or very similarly somewhere else. And you are not managing it properly, okay? You are basically heating your house with the windows open. Yeah? So your management has to be bang on in order to make your training successful. So, although it's often overlooked, it is a massive part of a successful training plan. Okay? And you will accelerate your training and you will make your training so much easier if your management is good. Yeah? It's not exciting. It's difficult sometimes to achieve it because you've got to mess around and do things at different times and, move the sofa so the dog can't think or put a blind up so the dog can't see out the window or do whatever you've got to do to prevent that problem. But I promise you, management is so important and often it's easier than training. Another classic example is fence running and stuff. Dogs that bark at the neighbours through a fence. Now, you could spend hours and hours and hours out in your garden training that behaviour if you wanted to, right? Or you could put up a fence that blocks the dog's view and that's the end of the issue. It's management versus training. And I'm always thinking to myself, can I manage this problem at no detriment to myself and no detriment to the dog and save myself hours of training? If I can, I'm absolutely going to do that. And if I am training, what management can I do that's going to aid my training and make my training easier, quicker, and more successful? I'm all about making life easy, guys. And good management is going to make your life easier in the long run. Even though it might feel like a pain in the arse at the time, it's 100% worth doing. So that's my little bit on management versus training, why it's massively important and why it's often overlooked. So if you are currently involved in a training plan, make sure your management is bang on. Go and write down everywhere where your dog is doing the behaviour you're trying to train them out of, and make sure you're managing it and preventing it. If you're not currently in a training program and you've got a dog that's reactive or that's got a problem, then drop me a line and we'll get you in one. Because you don't need to live with it for the rest of your life. You can make it better. Right, folks, we'll see you next week. And as always, if you've got more questions or you've got something you want me to cover on this little podcast, then drop me a line, because the most important thing I can do is answer your questions.